Joining me here in Brussels is Mrs. Zoe Konstantopoulou, who has served as President of the Greek Parliament over the first 7 months, critical months, of SYRIZA government. Mrs. Zoe Konstantopoulou, welcome to Brussels and to Euronews. I would like to start from the Greek case. You were constantly opposing to the leadership of SYRIZA, that you remember of, for the third bailout agreement with the creditors, and you finally left the party. Do you think that finally there was another solution, another alternative, an alternative to what finally SYRIZA and the previous government decided?
Human history is full of examples of alternatives, and Europe is all about alternatives. Europe itself was construed and conceived as an alternative to atrocities, to war, to fractions between the states. It is totally absurd to go back to moments in time when people were faced with dead ends and where misery was presented as the only solution. I would like to underline that it is really more than cynical to baptize the memoranda and the loan agreements bailout agreements. They are no bailout for the Greek society nor for any European society. They are death sentence agreements. They basically provide for more austerity, more misery, more unemployment, more marginalization of the societies.
But the thing is that they voted again for SYRIZA and for parties that agreed to this bailout, to this agreement. And the thing is that they sent the message, a clear message to Europe, that they want to stay in the Eurozone, in the European Union, and they don't want to be out of it.
I am absolutely appalled with dilemmas posed to any population, such as with us or without us. Either you're with us or you're against us. Especially, I'm appalled with European institution representatives taking a role of basically the ones who blackmail populations in order to stay. The Greek people did not really vote on the 20th of September. On the 20th of September, we had the biggest abstention in contemporary history. This basically means an almost 50% of people not voting. And this was the result of the people being totally discouraged by seeing that their vote during the referendum was totally disrespected and was bluntly violated.
We saw that many people outside Greece, people in Europe, were saying that, okay, the Greek government is asking from us fresh money and they don't want to pay their debt, they don't want to work hard, or they don't want to implement the reforms, necessary reforms, so that they can repay us.
First of all, being Greek yourself, you know that there's a huge defamation of the Greek people through this propaganda. The Greek people are among the most hard-working people in Europe, and it's a complete disrespect to these people to present them as a people who don't want to pay their debts. What we did at the Hellenic Parliament was we formed a commission to audit the debt and to really see how it was created and what it constitutes of. And this commission, called the Debt Truth Committee, the Truth Committee on Public Debt, found, first of all, that 92% of the money given to Greece has not been at all used for public expenses. Rather, it has been returned to creditors. And the committee also found that the basic bailout of these agreements was a bailout for the French and German banks which were holding Greek bonds. No bailout was ever offered to Greeks. No bailout was ever offered to the Greek society. No bailout was ever offered to the Greek economy. A bailout was offered to German and French banks, which had a 2-year time to get rid of their bonds before the first restructuring. No bailout was offered to those who lost their money from the restructuring, but a bailout was offered very conveniently to the Greek banks.
So what you suggest, or the committee suggests, is not paying the debt?
The committee is clearly saying that this debt is illegal, illegitimate, it's unsustainable and odious. This basically means that the debt cannot and should not be repaid. This also means that the debt has been paid time and again through the years. If you look at the interest rates that Greece has been repaying through the loan agreements concluded during the last decades by governments which were proven to be corrupt and were proven to be in transaction with other corrupt governments, but also with corrupt companies like Siemens, ThyssenKrupp, KaDeWe, etc.
You follow all this debate in Europe, that in the IMF, of course, that they say openly that we are going to discuss, to put it on the table and see how we are going to reprofile or to restructure the Greek debt. How this report could serve, I mean, how the government could use this, and if you are in discussions with the Greek government right now.
The government, unfortunately, did not use our report and did not use the committee, did not use the conclusions, and it did not use the evidence included therein, because the IMF has only been obliged to admit that the Greek debt is unsustainable after this report was issued. This report was issued on the 18th of June 2015, showing for the first time in public that there are documents of the IMF dating March and May 2010, and showing that the IMF knew ever since then that the Greek debt was unsustainable. It has been proven that public expenses in Greece during the last decades have all been below the European average, except for armaments expenses, except for defense expenses, which, by the way, entailed large-scale corruption with European and international companies. And by the way, these expenses are not cut according to the so-called reform program. Rather, pensions of 300 euros are being cut. Expenses in public education, where schools are operating without heating, without books, and without teachers, are being cut. And there's a real question to be answered.
How would you see Greece after 3 years? This is the timeline for this memorandum, for this bailout. Because for many people here, many officials and other people in Europe, in Brussels, in Berlin and other countries, it's the last chance for Greece to go out of the crisis and recover, and of course staying in the European family.
Well, there's no family which cuts the legs and arms of their children and then tell them, let's see if you're going to bleed to death or survive, this is your last chance. The Greek people are being exterminated, and this is not an exaggeration. We have a humanitarian crisis which amounts to social genocide. I would say this is a chance for Europe to really show what it's about. I'm very sorry to have experienced that so far the European institutions' representatives have acted towards a completely anti-European direction, because to penalize a population and to violate democracy has nothing to do with our European values. And I would say this is probably the last chance for Europe to save face and to become again an attractive home for all.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you too.